In I Got Rhythm Part 2, we learned about two essential musical elements, rests and ties. A quick review. A rest is a hole of silence between any two notes or chords, and every rhythmic note value, such as a whole note, half note, or quarter note, has a corresponding rest of equal duration, as indicated by these traditional symbols or pictographs, which are used in both Guitar World's rhythmic tab notation and standard sheet music. I find that in memorizing these symbols, it's helpful to think of a half rest as being a top hat, like Abraham Lincoln wore, and a whole rest as being an upside down top hat. And I think of a quarter note rest as looking like a seagull in flight, but with its wings rotated vertically, if that helps. A tie connects two neighboring notes or chords of the same pitch, resulting in a single note or chord that's articulated once and held for the combined duration of both rhythmic values. In standard sheet music, a tie is indicated by a curved line that arcs like a rainbow between two note heads that are on the same horizontal line or space on the 5-line musical staff. In rhythmic tab, fret numbers are used instead of note heads and are placed on a system of parallel horizontal lines, typically 6, 4 for bass typically, or 5, and sometimes 7 for guitar, or 8 if you're toasting the bossy. They represent the guitar's strings, those horizontal lines, the lowest and thickest string being on the bottom. And a tie is indicated by a broken or dashed line that arcs from one tab number, or a vertical stack of tab numbers if it's a chord, to an identical one that follows, which is enclosed in parentheses, unless it's a half note or a whole note, which already has that ring or oval around it, making the parentheses a little too cumbersome to include. So here's an example of some ties. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I played on beat 1, and I played this G5 chord in beat 2, but I held it over into beat 3. So it's 1, 2, 3, there's the tie. And then I hit this D5 chord on beat 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. See, I held that over the bar line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Getting back to basic note values, we learned in part 1 that in 4/4 meter, a quarter note serves as the foundational beat and counting unit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And that a bar of 4/4 can include either one whole note, 2 half notes, 4 quarter notes, or 1 half and 2 quarters. Whole and half notes are considered multiples of the beat. We're now going to explore subdivisions of the beat, which in 4/4 meter are any rhythmic values that are smaller and faster than a quarter note, and thus shorter in duration. If you take the 4 quarter notes that are in a bar of 4/4 and divide them all equally in half, like the cell division analogy I made in the previous lesson, right? You then have 8 eighth notes, which are twice as fast and are counted 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. I played that figure twice. You notice the first time through, when I went to the eighth notes, I went down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Okay, that's like your folk style strumming, acoustic, or folk rock. And then on the second time through, I went 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That's kind of like your rock, pumping, punk, metal. Usually it's done with power chords, but consecutive downstrokes definitely sound a lot different than that down up. It's a completely different feel. It's a little more urgent sounding. This is laid back. Whereas this is, it's more pumping. And when you think about it, it's really quite a different sound because you're actually doing an arpeggiation of the notes across the strings. So when you strum a downstroke, you're going in fast motion, right? And then when you strum an upstroke, you're going. So So that has a bite to it. And this has a, so that's like chugging downstrokes. And this is swishy, swishy, down, up, down, up. Now when counting eighth notes, the and counts are called the eighth note upbeats. To save space, I've used a single character ampersand symbol in the notation here, but it's and. And if you're doing it fast, you can just say n. Like you would in speech, you wouldn't say the D, like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. You don't have to say 1 and 2 and, get that d every time, because it's a pain in the neck to include that. And like a quarter note, an eighth note is signified by a vertical stem above or below a solid note head in standard notation, or below a tab number in rhythmic tab. But an eighth note additionally has either a flag attached to the tip of the stem, if it's a single eighth note by itself, or if it's paired with another eighth note, a thick horizontal beam that connects the tips of the two vertical stems. Getting back to the sound of eighth notes, this splitting or doubling up of the basic quarter note pulse and rhythm facilitates a much greater variety of rhythmic possibilities and range of musical expression, especially when combined with ties and eighth rests. Here's a little example. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Okay, a lot of these hits were on the eighth note upbeats. I'll do it really slow and count it again. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... See, there was a tie in that first bar. And then in the second bar, we went 1 and 2 and. Okay, we had eighth note rests. They look like the little, I don't know, percent symbol kind of, with just one thing. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And you'll see on beats 3 and 4 and, the single eighth note has that little flag comes up with it. So the first two bars again, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And then in the final bar, we have a quarter rest, an eighth rest, and then an eighth note coming in on what's called the and of 2 and tied over it to beat 3. And then we have 4 and. So it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So this gives you more options for creating more interesting rhythms. And overall, eighth notes are the most widely used rhythm in popular music, especially in rock, metal, blues, jazz, country, bluegrass, folk, and Latin world music, as well as in classical music. And while there are many other smaller rhythmic subdivisions of the beat, which we will definitely explore in future lessons, it is that 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and count and rhythmic undercurrent of eighth notes that is by far the most important rhythmic feel or groove that any aspiring musician and guitarist needs to become well acquainted with and master. It is truly the heartbeat of popular music. And there are so many cool things you can do with eighth notes to create interesting and exciting rhythms and phrases, especially when you use them with various pitches and articulations, which is something we will continue exploring next time.